on our agenda today. If I can,
Ms. Squirrel?
I'd like to have,
Okay,
I'm sorry?
we're ready.
You're ready? Oh, okay.
Starting the computer. Okay.
We'd like to approve item 1 as a consent item, and I think Mr. Rosendahl will agree if that's okay. Item 1, a consent item, which is just funding for the LA Neighborhood Initiative West Enhancement Project.
Yep, indeed.
So that will be approved. I know on... What? I haven't seen it
Right
yet.
here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sachs. Item number 1.
Are any of them here?
Good afternoon.
Yes. I'm sure she'll do your clock.
Oh,
Thank you very much. I can't agree more with you on funding for the West Adams enhancement projects. It certainly helps to narrow down the area we're talking about in LA, because the West Adams enhancement projects, I assume, pertains to West Adams Avenue or West Adams Boulevard. Because in the same information packet given out by the LA DOT, there's a Byzantine Latino quarter, which affects the Normandy Pico and the Hoover Pico area, and a Koreatown area, or enhancement area, which affects Normandy and Olympic. That being said, can I get some clarification on just what exactly the Mid-City Expo line refers to? Because we've covered the West Adams area, we've covered the Latino Quarter area, we've covered the Koreatown area, but again, there's funding, over $7 million going to Mid-City Expo. What area of the city would that pertain to? And is there funding, is there a Planet Orc funding project?
This is specific to the Adams area.
I understand it's specific, and I've asked specific question regarding what specifically the Mid-City Expo line refers to, since there's no documentation put out by Metro, there's no documentation put out by the state legislation, there's no documentation included in the report prepared by the LA DOT staff mentioning Mid-City until it comes to in front of the Transportation Committee, and it's funded for the Mid-City line. And I've asked, and I've asked, and I've asked, and nobody's been able to come up. I haven't found any documentation whatsoever that would refer to the Mid-City. And in yesterday's meeting at the council, at the County Board of Supervisors, and the MTA, there was the discussion regarding Prop A, and there was 2 Prop A's, same letter, different projects,
All right, well, I
same
will
projects,
ask
different
for
names.
DOT and MTA to let you know where that may be, but the item today is on the Adams.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the item would be approved. It'll be a communication based on that. We're not here quite a quorum. If we could go to item number 6.
Item number 6 is the DOT report relative to the Wilshire Boulevard bus lanes.
Yeah, before we do that.
I'm sorry. I had a request of Mr. Rosendahl really quick to do item number 5, so I apologize. Don't go too far, though. Item 6 will be next.
We're just going to go quickly on this. This is all good news, folks. I love good news. We all know that the Green Line stopped in 1994. Nobody really has given me a straight answer why the Green Line did not get into LAX. They put it a mile and a half away into a miniature golf course. Great. And the rest of the world has put their light rails into their airports. Duh. It makes a lot of sense. So what we have done in the last few years is resurrect something out of the mothballs and move as quickly forward as we can conceivably go. And so what this motion does is throw another $750,000 into the play right now that needs to be thrown in there while LAX is modernizing its airport. As they get that people mover project going, we can tie the Green Line into it. You all know that Measure R is as critical to the success of our future as anything else on the ballot, which is a half-cent sales tax in the county for monies to actually do something about mass transit, be it bus-only lanes, which I'm big on, fresh new buses that I'm big on. Anything to do with buses is a quick hit and a good one, to the Expo line, to the Green Line, to the Crenshaw line, to the Subway to the Sea, to the Yellow Line, Purple Line, green, red, white, and blue, okay? all these things are in the play. The good news is we got the green line in that bill, thanks to State Senator Jenny Orpeza, where now it will definitely continue to Aviation and Century. Then we're going to point it north and get up to Lincoln Boulevard and into Santa Monica, and therefore have a north-south relief plan from down in the Galleria in the South Bay up to the Expo line completion in Santa Monica. So what this does is throw $750,000 of money that is sitting in a pot of development money that I'm going to push into this to finish the planning, so that the planning gets tied into the same time LAX is doing its master planning for its modernization, and at the same time that Measure R on the ballot will complement that. So this is just another push of money into the planning stages so that we can build this green line in all of our time over the next couple of 3 years, so that we can all appreciate a light rail into the airport. So it's basically just to let you know we're pushing money from an account that sits there for the very purpose of making the green line happen. That's it.
Thank you. And we do have one public comment card. Mr. Sachs can come up, but while he's doing that, I want to compliment you, Mr. Rosendahl, because the good news is you have money available because there's been development. The bad news is there's been development over the years prior to you even coming in, and you are using your money for this purpose, which is really fabulous. And you're right, in every other city, the transportation system comes into the, actually, to the airport. So taking the leadership and your willingness to spend this money and to help expedite it is very much appreciated. So, and your leadership on that. You've been a strong supporter between that and the Venice line. Right? The red line.
Whenever MTA tells me they're going to give me a rapid bus on Venice Boulevard, I think I'll fall out of my chair and I'll just go whoopee.
Looking up for that. Mr. Sachs.
Arnold Sachs, just to clarify for Councilman Rosendahl, the rest of the world has their transportation to the airport because the rest of the world isn't as corrupt as L.A. The loss of funding in 1994, yet there was funding made available for the Gold Line. When MTA gets pressure from the city of L.A. to complete a project from start to finish, maybe you'll have something. The Blue Line wasn't finished. It went to 7th and downtown. It was supposed to go to Union Station. The Red Line was supposed to start from that point in 7th Street and go to Fairfax, funded, not completed. There was a funding to go from Western and Wilshire to San Vicente and Pico, funded, not started, not completed. EIR, EIS for the Green Line. What were they doing digging over on 3rd and Fairfax? No answers, no questions, no one knows. You want more money for the same people? Why don't you give crack to a bunch, just dump a bunch of crack down in you know, it's like it's the same thing. Transit-oriented development, why would MTA all of a sudden be involved, why would LADOT be involved in transit-oriented development? Were they involved in anything in Hollywood? Were they involved in anything in Wilshire? Were they involved in anything in downtown? Were they involved in anything on the Gold Line? $750,000 designated. You designated $250,000 to connect the Green Line to the Gold Line, or not the Gold Line, the Green Line to the Expo line. It's chump change. And when the Green Line is extended to the airport, if and when, will it be compatible with the Crenshaw line? That's a bus-only line, or is it going to be a rail line, bus-only line? And to Marina Del Rey, when your grandkids have grandkids.
I appreciate that. I just want to react a little bit to what you just said. What we're going to do is get that green line to Aviation and Century. That will be the multimodal spot for all the other dreams when they become true. And then from there, you'll have your people mover going into the airport. The green line will then go up the northern part.
I understand.
Thank you.
the wish list.
Thank you,
In
Mr.
my
Sachs.
lifetime.
Thank you. On item number 6, we'll take public comment first from Francisca Porches and Sun Yun Yang.
So we just acted on moving forward with that.
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Council.
It's approved.
Good afternoon. We're here to urge you once again to secure city fundings to make this project happen as soon as possible. Today, the federal funding is up for grabs. We've been in conversations with Congresswoman Roybal Allard's office. She was putting out, or they were putting out, that the budget obviously has been pushed because of the election year. But let's talk about scenarios. Scenario number one could be that being partisan, hoping Obama gets elected. He is actually talking about earmark reform, which means that a lot of earmark projects might go. In the worst case scenario, might go or might get delayed for the next year, right? That's an Obama election. If it's McCain, he's already saying he's not going to tolerate earmark projects, which means it goes or it gets delayed, who knows, right? But in both cases, this is going to both potentially get delayed or be gone, right? No, we're being pessimistic maybe, but the reality is that 2006 has taught us a lot, right? In 2006, a Republican administration, when Congress came in, a Democrat Congress, they kind of threw everything at them, the budget. It didn't actually get approved until the following year, and a lot of projects were lost, and a lot of projects were delayed. And so we have fears that this is going to happen. We've presented it here before. And so once again, Councilmember Rosendahl, you have been pretty inconsistent in the process around bus-only lanes. We met with you about 7 months ago, and we haven't heard back from your office until this point from your chief of staff. You had committed to look for alternative funding, and there hasn't been any response. And so we want to pose to you that we really want you to follow up on your commitment to look for this alternative funding. Today, you're getting funding approved for the LAX study from the same pot of money we had pointed out. Councilmember Grew, when we met with you, had committed to doing monthly reports. It's 7 months later, and this is the first major report. We're very disheartened by that. And so we're asking you once again, please secure the funding as soon as possible with such an insecure federal funding process.
Good afternoon. We're here today to once again summon the leadership of this body to secure city funding for the Wilshire Bus-Only Lane project. The record speaks for itself. The Wilshire Boulevard Bus-Only Lane has been on the back burner for a very long time. With your recent leadership, Councilmember Gruhl, and that of MTA's, an official policy has been adopted, but yet the history of this project has taught us a lot. In 2000, this project was proposed by the MTA with a federal grant of $232 million, contingent upon the city's approval, and the city unanimously turned it down in 2000. And then the funds were robbed for the Exposition Light Rail. 2003, Councilmember Cindy Misachowski championed a 1-mile pilot project. And in 2005, Councilmember Rosendahl, you ran on a anti-bus only lane platform and got into the city council. And finally, it was LADOT eliminated the 1-mile bus only lane with your blessing. And LADOT, since then, from 2005 to 2007, has been dragging their feet on it. And in 2007, this was finally approved, yet now we're facing an environmental clearance hurdle as well as a federal funding delay. And it's been 7 months since the last commitment to speed this project, to make this project a priority, to have reports on this project. And we still, the report that we're getting today has been a 7-month process. The feds are telling us that the transportation appropriation budget is going to be postponed until the new presidency, specifically March of 2009. Both Obama and McCain are guaranteeing major earmark reform, which could either delay this project or not, provide funding for it at all. It's been 8 years, and we're really asking for the LA City Transportation Committee to take on this as a legacy and take bold leadership. And political will for us really means funding this.
Thank you. Can I ask you both the question? Who are the two people who have been the biggest advocates for this Wilshire bus lane on the city council?
Both of you.
Okay. Both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, I was surprised, since we had scheduled and shared with you that we scheduled this meeting today, to receive a copy of a flyer and get accosted by a Channel 5 reporter suggesting that we had not done enough or that we were not supportive of the bus lane.
Right.
Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So we have, and we will ask, and MTA will be able to report, but the two people who have been the biggest advocates for this, my statement yesterday was no good deed goes unpunished. in the fact that we have worked very hard. We worked with the DOT and the MTA to actually apply for this money. As you may recall, it was not planned until 2026, until we advocated for this funding. It wasn't an earmark, it was an application for these funds. We have worked very hard. You will hear today that they have been working since March when we were able to identify the funding. The City of Los Angeles put in $200,000, the MTA put in $200,000. What was required, not by our choice, but environmental review that was required by the federal government for us to do that. And EIR does not take a short period of time. As much as we are supportive of the Wilshire bus lane, there are many entities who are not in favor of this Wilshire bus lane, who are part of that EIR process as well. That is what's been going on. To suggest that nothing has happened in 7 months is disingenuous, and I think unfair to the two people who have been your biggest advocates. And so regardless of how you treated us yesterday in this flyer being handed out and what you said to the press and what you've suggested about Mr. Rosendahl, we are still going to push forward because this is the right thing to do. But I want you to know that we work very hard and have been advocates for this. And it is unfair to suggest that we have not been doing what we're doing when we can, and you will hear today, point out what has been done. Can it move faster? Of course. Do we want things to move faster? Of course. The bureaucracy is as challenging to us as it is to you. But we are committed to this Wilshire bus lane. And so I hope in the future that you will consider, to the two people who have been the biggest advocates, how you relate and how you send that message, because I don't see any of the other bus riders or the people or on this flyer that it says there's a hearing tomorrow, and the fact that we have been pushing this forward instead of it being in 2026, that it is going to be sooner that period of time. Okay? Mr. Rosendahl, do you want to say something? They had their opportunity to speak.
Make a quick comment. Just a revision of history. I did not run on an anti-bus platform. I actually ran for office because I'm fed up with the gridlock that this city has. I don't need this job, and I'm not going to live as long as you. I'm 63. I want to get it done now, yesterday, the day before. That's why I screamed to MTA, when are you going to have an express rapid bus on Venice Boulevard? It's a total no-brainer, and we don't have it. And that's why I've said that for 3 years. I still don't have it, okay? This particular project, which I'm a passionate believer in. When I came in office, there was this one dumb mile that created nothing but more gridlock in my district. I called all the other council members en route. I called our mayor. I called Supervisor Yaroslawski. I went through the whole mix, and everybody said nothing. So that's when I came back with the idea, let's get the federal money. We got the federal money. We got everybody moving forward to do the plan now to do a bus-only lane. So it's almost like you're biting the hand that's feeding you. We're the ones who've been fighting for it with passion. I've shown up at every transportation committee meeting all the time because I have a passion for this, and I strongly believe that if we don't reinvest in our transportation infrastructure, it's time to leave Southern California, because it ain't the place to be if you're in a car in gridlock forever, or you're too poor to even have a car, and the buses are packed like sardines, like a third world country. I'm outraged by all these things. So I say to you, you're young. You're going to be around a lot longer than me. That patience is a virtue. I don't even have patience anymore at my point in life. Well, I want to get things done. So you have our full commitment. The two of us here who show up every week or every 2 weeks for these meetings, we want that bus lane, and we want it now. The monies that MTA and DOT has appropriated had to be done. We had to do that study. The federal money, unless they continue to rocky and goes to Afghanistan and Iran, and the whole country's economy collapses, which it's on the verge of, as we all see, it's outrageous, there'll be no money for nothing. So we want to get that bus line done. We want to get it done in real time, in the real moment. So what we basically ask of the two of you to work with us, to listen to where we are and help us move to the next level so we can get on that bus together and have a bus-only lane that we can all appreciate was the hard work of you and us in making it happen. That's all. Thanks.
So thank you very much. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker.
I wanted to actually respond very quickly. It'll be very quick. We still have a moral responsibility. I don't think at any point have we said that you are anti-bus only lanes, Councilmember Rule. I think we were stating the record. I think we still have a moral responsibility to hold elected officials accountable. And so,
And I welcome that. I welcome that.
I just want to respond really quickly, and then I'll be out and I'll let Mr. Arnold Sachs speak. And so what we're asking, and what we've been asking for the last, at least since the year started, has been a commitment from this body to secure city funds for this to happen, and because there's so much insecurity in this federal process, and up to this point, and even today, as you heard our speech, you haven't really responded on whether you're going to secure any city funds, given the acknowledgement of the insecurity of the federal funding process, whether it's an Obama or McCain presidency. And so that is what we're asking for. We haven't gotten a real response on, and that's why we're actually holding our folks, you folks, accountable to that.
Well,
Thank
we love
you.
you, but
Thank
no,
you.
we have another $400 million deficit facing our city, so I don't know if the city will be in a position, and I'm not a demagogue, and we can't appropriate monies we don't have as a city.
Right.
We can certainly use the limited amounts for the CEQA study and get the federal money for the follow-on, but we're not in that position.
We don't,
$43 million were approved for the Exposition Light Rail last year and the year before. And so when the city wants to actually fund something and sees it as a priority, $43 million, it does it. We're asking for the same kind of leadership.
but that's and we're, the leverage that 43 million, and you have to look at it in context, the 43 million was in addition to the other money that we received on the federal and state level. That's why getting the federal money helps us and be able to leverage that. And that was the whole intention, because to find $22 million from the MTA was going to take us till 2026, and to be able to do that. And Prop A and C, which we can send you a copy of, is in a deficit. We're going to have to stop dash bus services potentially in the future because of that. And we'll be more than happy to send that to you. But I think Mr. Rosendahl said it well. We want to be partners, but I think you need to be fair as well. I am more than willing for you guys to hold us accountable. That's our jobs. But I think you have to be truthful and honest about the two people who have been fighting for this.
Which
So
is
thank
on
you.
the flyer if
Thank
you read it.
Thank you.
And
I did.
do
Thank
get
you.
people to
Mr.
vote
Sachs.
for Measure R, okay? We need that.
Yes, thank you. You're right. To hold you accountable for just moving on 7 months is not fair, because actually, it's like 14 years when the Wilshire-only bus lane, the Wilshire Boulevard was designated for rapid bus transportation. And prior to that, there was over 50 years of study done on alternative modes of transportation on Wilshire Boulevard. So we're looking at maybe 70 years of study, and you roll out, it could be available by 2026. It's kind of like, and I explained to this at the West Side Extension update that was held in Westwood, maybe a month and a half ago, that the gentleman giving the speech or talking from MTA was discussing the alternatives and the years and this and that. And I gave him the analogy that he sounded like Dan Aykroyd when he played Julia Childs in a skit on Saturday Night Live, and he's playing Julia Childs in the kitchen, and she accidentally cuts her finger off and just goes on merrily, merrily, merrily. Like 20 years is nothing. In 20 years, if the global warming continues, the subway to the sea will be at Western and Wilshire, because that's where the Pacific Ocean will be. They won't need any funding. 20 years. You just mentioned cutting dash. Why not cut the commuter express before you cut city transportation? Commuter express goes to the outline, doesn't even serve, it goes to different parts, it goes outside the city, serves county areas. Let the MTA take over it. And again, the 900-pound gorilla. Whatever you do here in the city transportation depends basically on what MTA decides in the long run. And until you get them on board, and don't forget one other thing, Councilman Rosendahl, Proposition 1H, the state initiative that was passed, money's starting to be released. Until that gets spent wisely, we don't need a half-cent sales tax, because we've already seen that MTA doesn't know what the hell they're doing there.
Thank you. If we could have staff come up to the table, including MTA.
Good afternoon. Kang Hu, Senior...
Yeah, no, you're going to, and could you also, the questions that were, asked by the Bus Riders Union and the threat of the federal funds, could you give us a status report on that as well? If, if there are potential threat to that, what else we can do to ensure that it stays in the budget?
Okay, Kang Hu, Senior Transportation Engineer with LADOT. I just want to bring you up to date about the progress that we have made. And I go through some of the work that we have done, and then we turn it over to MTA for the federal funding. On May 28 this year, the city and MTA staff had a project kickoff meeting with FTA officials to discuss the project schedule, funding plans, the roles and responsibilities, and also the environmental clearance issues. We also took them out to the field and drove them from downtown to city of Santa Monica, and they were very impressed by the project and continue to show strong support for this project. And subsequently, as Councilwoman, you already indicated that the city transferred $200,000 to MTA to hire consultants for the environmental assessment, which is required by the FTA. We worked pretty hard with MTA staff to get 3 consultants on board. One of the firms, Jones and Stokes, they started the environmental process in June, and they're working on cultural resources, noise, air quality studies. And the second firm, Roberts Group, is planning on public outreach beginning in November. And the Iteris Group, the third company, is conducting the traffic modeling and impact studies. The environmental assessment is expected to be completed by July 2009. And if FTA approved the environmental analysis and funding is appropriated, then we could start the pavement repair work in August 2009. As part of the environmental assessment, we would like to get some preliminary engineering work on 2 widening projects started. We would need the City Council's authority to negotiate MOU with MTA so that the work that we put in will get reimbursed by MTA. And now let me just turn it over to Brad and Rex. Now you can talk about the federal funding status.
Sure. I'm Brad McAllister. I'm Executive Officer of Long Range Planning with Metro, and Councilmember Gruhl and Rosendahl, I just would like to express our appreciation for your leadership on this project. We know this is a challenging project and appreciate your strong support on keeping it moving. We also appreciate our working relationship with LADOT and other departments within Los Angeles, and we're very pleased with how the project's going. We're off and running with this. We've had our first kickoff meeting in May with FTA, and as Kang Hu mentioned, the consultants are on board, and we're moving forward. We hope to have our first outreach meetings in November, and in the period from January to June, be doing more outreach with the community, as well as developing the environmental document that we'll be bringing back. So I think we're off and running. It's a schedule we're very committed to working as hard as we can to maintain, and we'll be happy to be coming back before you as we go through the process. As far as the federal funding goes, we
Can I ask
have
a question on the EIR? So you're preparing, the consultants you've hired are preparing the EIR as we speak?
Yes, it's not actually an EIR, it's an environmental assessment which determines basically what mitigation is necessary. So that's the document we're currently working on. But we have Jones and Stokes as the lead environmental consultant, the Robert Group lead on working with them on outreach, and Iteris is the transportation group to look into the neighborhood community issues on Wilshire.
And they'll be complete by the end of the year?
They'll have their technical work complete by the end of the year, and that will be the basis for further work with the community, as well as in developing the initial assessment, which will be done by June.
And then the federal government is requiring that environmental assessment be provided to them prior to the release of the funds?
Yes, they basically have to approve that. The funding is actually tied to the federal budget. So we've gone through the application process. We were actually ranked the highest. This is a new process. It's the second year of funding through the Very Small Start program. But the timing was perfect for where we were. We were looking for funding, and the process came along right when we were searching. And so we're recommended by FTA for funding for about $23 million to do the project. We have received a pre-award authority to begin working. It doesn't commit the federal government, but it allows us to start. If the project is approved, we're reimbursed for work. And because the president has signed a continuing resolution rather than adopted a budget, we were hoping that we would have this project actually identified in the October budget. But because that hasn't happened, the president has adopted a 6-month continuing resolution, and money is available for new starts and small starts at a kind of a level of funding consistent with current allocations. FTA will be working over the next month to figure out how they're going to allocate that money, and we're hopeful that they'll allocate some of that to this project. And we have our representatives back in Washington working to ensure that, and I'm sure our representatives would be very happy to work with the city's representatives to kind of make that
They mentioned
case.
that, Congresswoman Royba Allard and others, I mean, if there are appropriators that we need to work with, and I saw Senator Feinstein this morning who, on the whole, it was on the Metrolink crash this morning, they were talking about rail safety. But I know she is also, a big supporter of the funding, so if you can alert us to encouraging them to make sure this funding doesn't go away and all of that, and other points of kind of connectivity.
Be very happy to do that, and we're working every day with our people, and we'll make sure that we're coordinating with you as far as who needs to be talked to.
Okay. And I know there are some questions on they call it the Condo Canyon portion, about bump outs and so forth. We did receive a letter from the Holmby Westwood Property Owners Association, which I'm hoping you will be meeting with them. We can give you a copy of the letter because they have some concerns about it. But are you just starting kind of underway having those conversations with some of the groups along the Wilshire Busway?
We are, and we've went on your website today, so we pulled down the letters that you've received for the committee. So
Okay.
I have both of the letters that,
Okay,
that
good.
you're referring to. And we're just getting started as it goes with outreach. I think in November we'll be going out with kind of an introduction of the project to community groups. We'd be happy to be going out to these specific groups. And we know there are a lot of sensitivities in the Condo Canyon area, and what we'll be doing in the November through next year period is to try and work through those issues and see how we can resolve them. So we'll be working very closely with the community and doing what we
and
can.
heaven forbid that we don't have, that we don't get the money from the federal government. And I know in the long range plans it's 2026, but we do have, cross our fingers, Measure R and some other things. Are there dollars within Measure R that would be eligible for this Wilshire-only bus lane? I know there's some competitive parts of the process.
I'm not aware that there are any funds that would be available, but what I can tell you is that based on the outcome of the election in November, we'll be coming. We had a draft long-range plan prepared. It's been put on hold until Measure R does pass. I'm not aware of any funding that would be available for this other than the money in 2026. I'm sorry to say, but what I can tell you is that after the election and we know whether it passed or didn't pass, we'll be revisiting the long-range plan, and that'll be kind of our opportunity to reassess what dollars are available, and we plan to go to the board probably early in 2009 with a final draft. So I think by then we'll have an answer.
Because I think we understand in Los Angeles that it's a seamless system and that there's a variety of buses are an important part of that, and we've seen with the Orange Line in the San Fernando Valley that it is cheaper and easier and quicker than some of the other projects that may take years. And so I think that's one of the reasons we're so supportive of having this Wilshire bus lane, because it is, relatively speaking, can be done at a much quicker pace than some of the other processes. So I know I will share that with the MTA board members as well as they're looking at the long-range plan. I know, and colleagues, the recommendation in the report was to authorize DOT to execute. What we want to do is authorize DOT to negotiate on that for the I think it's 22.06, and deposit such funds into the Wilshire bus lane account. Is that correct, Cieli?
So moved.
Questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
Question. MTA?
Yes.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Okay, good smiles. Hey, there are life-size, like Mars craters on Wilshire Boulevard that are unsafe for your passengers right now. When do you project that you will help the city fix the street that is destroyed by the great service that you provide, but the weight of, the old Wilshire Boulevard isn't able to hold up, especially between Crenshaw and La Brea? when do you think we could make it safer? Because right now it's unsafe and your buses have to travel in the number 2 lane as opposed to the curb lane, which would be a bus-only lane because there's no parking on Wilshire right now. So when have you,
Well, I think that's always a challenge. I think part of this project will address some of those issues along, the portion that's what Fairfax did.
Well, Councilman, I reported earlier before your arrival, we're doing the environmental assessment, and we want to get that done by July 2009. And once that's approved by the Fed, and we can start
the
working
environmental
on
assessment or the work?
the environmental assessment is currently underway now,
Yeah.
and it is scheduled to be completed by July 2009.
What-
Once that's done, then the pavement repair can start.
Like in August?
Yeah, that's what
You really should, because it's unsafe for your passengers, it's difficult for your drivers. There are some parts, and I hope you've all driven. Have you driven it?
We drove the FTA down in the curb lane,
Right.
both directions on Wilshire, just to get them, have a sense of Wilshire
Got
Boulevard.
it. And you understand my frustration in that. Thank you very much. We're all working ahead. If we could cut any time on that, I appreciate it. Thank you, Carolyn Jackson, for the good job you do for DOT all the time as well, as you said. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And please keep us up to date, and I guess I was going to say yes on an update, I think, and if the representatives from the Bus Riders Union, we also encourage you to, the MTA, if you can give them your numbers and email, so if it doesn't come, I think we're going to ask for report backs, but easily to get a status report on where they are, and maybe some of the public hearings, so you all can participate. Okay? Yes. Thank you. We have it available, so, yeah.
Number 5.
So we did, Mr. Labange, he's joined us, so if we could get your approval on item 1, 5, and 6 as remaining, so. And I think we're going to take the taxi items together. There's a request to do those.
Item number 3 is a Gruel Perry motion relative to the development of an RFP to secure a consultant to assist the DOT with preparing for the 2010 taxi franchise agreement. And item 4 is a DOT report in response to a Han Rosendahl motion relative to amending the LAMC and parking of taxis in residential areas.
Good afternoon, council members. Amir Sadati, Assistant General Manager, LADOT. Oh, I'm joined with our General Manager, Rita Robinson.
Rita Robinson, window dressing.
No way, no way, no way.
And Tom Drischler, our Acting Bureau Head. What I just want to quickly mention is we don't have a written report for you today, but we understand the concerns, and we wanted to at least come here and provide you with a verbal update and work on a presentation for your next November 6th committee meeting. Since this motion has been introduced, there's a lot of things that we've been doing with DOT as it relates to taxis. As you were part of, Councilmember Gould, the whole Hail a Taxi initiative and some other things we've worked through our reorganization of the Office of Parking Management. We've also been able to create the whole new Bureau of Taxi Franchise and Regulations. So, and we've asked Tom Drischler to be acting in that role. So we understand the real concerns out there with the refranchising that's coming, which is actually about 26 months away. The refranchising will happen needs to be in place by December of 2010, which means by January 1 of 2011. That's where we need to be. So in general, we've done a lot of work to this point. We're working through the issues that we would like to bring up, not only to this committee, but as well as to the Taxi Commission, as far as the scope of work that needs to be in that consultant RFP. Through that process, we want to be as transparent as possible, make sure there is a lot of input from the industry, from the drivers, from all the different groups, make sure that we have a real good product out there that not only looks at the refranchising, looks at the clean vehicle, the greening of taxis. It looks at also the driver welfare issues that were brought up as part of the UCLA study. So with that, I'll just give a quick cue to Tom here to give a little bit of what we've so far worked on and what's going to be included in that RFP, and then we'll provide you a timeline.
Yes, Tom Drischler. We are going to present a report to the Tax Cap Commission next week, where we'll recommend the key items that will be part of the focus for the RFP, for the consultant study. They will of course, include vehicle and air quality standards or green taxis, driver safety and training, driver and vehicle permitting requirements, driver and company transparency, healthcare, and workman compensation issues, wheelchair accessible service monitoring, overall service performance, and a very big item, something that's been a subject of much speculation, is looking at our entire franchise approach vis-a-vis medallion systems or permitted systems or hybrid system of all three, and to see if there's potential for additional revenue for the city and what the potential impacts would be on the service level to the public.
And I know, because we've had conversations with both, are concerned because we did introduce this motion in March and had April. We were going to come back with in 60 days, I think, or 30 days, with moving forward on the RFP. And so my concern was in kind of giving the department a hard time was our interest in making sure that there was no gap, that we really planned ahead. You know, one of those times where we, and I know this is the DOT's goal as well, but so many times we extend contracts, all these things, when we know 5 years in advance exactly when it's going to happen. And so that I did not want that to happen this time, because there are a lot of interest and issues that need to be dealt with in a refranchise. Because the last time it was done was when? I know it was probably when I first got elected.
2000.
Oh, before I was elected. Okay, 2000. So it's a 10-year. Mm-hmm. 10 year, okay.
Yep.
And so I just didn't, we knew 10 years in advance when it was going to happen. So Rita has assured me, I think, and Amir, that the fact that it's been since it's April will not, you're going to expedite this in moving forward, that we will not lose any time.
We don't. And members of the committee, I'm here not only for window dressing, but also to apologize on behalf of the department.
That wasn't a real window dressing. My last comments were window dressing. Yeah.
That we take this very seriously, and we have been in conversations with both the Taxi Alliance and other individuals that are of interest, as well as the commission, which you know recently just changed leadership and membership. Through the mayor's office, and so we have a new member, Mr. Hernandez, who the council confirmed a few weeks ago, who's very involved. So we've had a number of balls in the air. So yes, I missed the target. Yes, I take full accountability for that. And at the same time, we've been trying to build the taxi franchise because, as I told you all last year when I took this job, is that the department is in a work in progress and very much a broken house that the city had not made an investment in the past few years. And so at the same time, we're trying to build the house. We've had a lot of things on the burner. And actually, taxis has been a one-person show for a very long time. And what we want to do is to give Tom some opportunity to take the extensive knowledge he has and share it with some other staff that can assist in the process. So we're now in the process with Amir's assistance building that house, and assuring you that this is certainly not something we want to fall between the cracks, because certainly it's important to so many people as well as our constituents that we do an excellent job on this RFP to get the information we need so that we can provide you the best template for making a decision, because that's really what our role is, to provide you the best options.
So that's what I want to have happen as well, so I appreciate that.
So we're on the same page. And Tom and Amir and I are all working together to this. I wore my battle fatigue outfit to make sure that you knew that I was taking this seriously, and we will continue to work hard to, pick up all the balls that we need to, because now that we have a bank, you're making investment through your budget last year. I really appreciate still the investment you've made in the department. So you now at least have an ATM card you can go and get something out from time to time, but sometimes we come up with insufficient funds. And in this case, we did drop the ball. I did on this issue, but we picked up other ones, and we hope to move forward with this one and make sure that we give you periodic updates on where we are with it, along with having, very much like the MTA, on the bus one-way EAIR, we want to have discussions with different people to be able to have their input to this process so everybody feels like they've had their voice heard.
And I've said my most important is to tell me when there are problems so we can help solve them
Absolutely.
before they get greater in time period. And so that was why we started early. Do you guys have? We do have some public comment cards too.
How does a taxi receive a franchise?
Well, it's through a bid process. We franchise companies. And our system is that when the franchises are available for bidding, the department issues an RFP, requesting for proposals to serve specific areas of the city. We divide the city into 5 main service areas, and the companies are allowed to bid on serving those particular service areas.
Okay, so we can be clear, it'll be open, transparent, and inclusive for everybody when we go through that process?
Absolutely.
Second question is, are taxis regulated by the Police Commission or the Transportation Committee? Where does the buck stop in regulating?
With the Department of Transportation and the Board of Tax Cab Commissioners, which is advisory, but our rules and regulations are approved by the board, and if rate ordinances and franchise ordinances are approved by the council.
Correct. Mr. Drischler anticipated my little addendum. The rates are evaluated by the department and the commission in significant public hearings, but they represent recommendations that come to you, council members. So you will ultimately be the legislators of the taxi rates, and you will also be the body that ultimately has to approve the terms and conditions of the franchise and all of the implementing contracts that are signed with the successful bidders.
Okay, good. And so I look forward when our cabbies guys are in the room when we do those things to make sure we get their input. In the 2010 franchise agreement, is there an opportunity to provide certain incentives, such as for the operation of green vehicles or hybrid taxis? Are we going to build anything into it looking at the future?
There's every opportunity to build those kinds of incentives into the refranchising process. It's up to the board and the council to indicate which ones they'd like. And as staff, we'll certainly present all the data available so you can make an informed decision.
Great. Now we have a whole bunch of. Oh, did you want to say something?
Most recently, and again, unfortunately, Councilmember Gurul isn't here, but one of the other reasons there was a potential delay is the annual conference of all the regulators from all of the United States, Canada, Britain, met 3 weeks ago in Redondo Beach, and this was their annual meeting where there was a lot of information, good information sharing from all these other cities, and there was a lot of information that we've gathered on green initiatives, and not only initiatives, but policies and other things that other cities have tried and either failed or has worked for them. So we're going to be sharing a lot of that information. We'll be part of this information as well as bringing it to you, to the Board of Taxi, as well as the Council, to have a better decision.
Great, I appreciate that. And Mr. LeBlanc is going to go through the questions and comments. I just want to make sure that the taxi cab drivers who are in the back of the room here, as we go forward with creating that RFP, that their input is respectfully appreciated and taken into consideration so that they feel strongly that we're doing the right thing. They mean a lot to me that
Right.
they get that respect from us.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Appreciate it. I'm going to have a public comment card. Arnold Sachs, Hamid Khan, Moyes, is that correct? Come on up here. It's a 1-minute comment right here. Moyes, Wonderkin.
1 minute, Mr.
Yeah, 1 minute. And forgive me, Mr. Silisasi, and I want you all to pronounce your names correctly. Okay, 1 minute. Here we go. DOT, you could step down. We'll give all those chairs, give everybody an opportunity. Mr. Sachs?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. When are you going to consider the request for the 2010 taxi franchise agreement? I'd hope that one of the questions that are considered is the question of the liens on the vehicles. It was brought up in the taxi commission meeting that bandit cabs seem to have a lien escape clause between the owner of the cab and the person who's driving the cab if a 30-day impound fee. And it seems to me if it's being done by bandit cabs, it's probably being done by licensed taxis in the city of LA. It should be addressed. This is a checklist on Commission on Local Government Services Transportation Task Force from yesterday, a background driver's check. Basically, my point is that in a newspaper article from April 7th, a driver talks about that he's driving for 20 years, he owns a cab. The permits can cost between $23,000 and $60,000. My question is, who owns the permit?
Thank you very much for your comment. Thank you.
And for your attention, too.
Thank you.
And your comment,
Next.
your reply.
Thank you very much. Hopefully, if I can exceed my minute for a little bit, Hamid Khan with the Los Angeles Taxi Workers Alliance. Thank you very much. Again, I just passed out some handouts, and I just want to quickly draw a timeline to what has been going on. That on July 13, 2006, the LA Times came up with a front-page article about the fraud and the exploitation in the taxi industry. Then, and that's Santayo's photo on the front page of LA Times. Then in September of 2006, the UCLA study came out validating all the struggles of the taxi drivers and the exploitation that had been going on. We had a community hearing, and then on September 29th, Councilmember Gruhl came out with this motion, demanding a response to the UCLA study, particularly on the issues of financial transparency. Yeah. But unfortunately, DOT came out with only one thing as a commentary on the wages that the drivers were making, which then we took their assessment to the UCLA Dean for the School of Statistics, who called it an equivalent of ecological fallacy. Then again, in March of 2008, Councilmember Gruhl came out with the motion about this RFP. So now this issue remains that, this whole history of harassment, death threats, exploitation.
From where?
From the companies, which the UCLA study has highlighted issues of self-dealing, issues of monopoly, issues of holding people hostage. LA Times article calls about death threats to driver who try to organize and the retaliation. This is all documented. But yet at the same time, either there's a culture of dismissiveness because we've gone to DOT, and yes, under the leadership of General Manager Robinson, absolutely we're hoping that things are going to change. But it's been over 2.5 years, and now we're entering into the end of this phase, so we don't know when this culture of exploitation and sharecropping going to end. So we're really looking for your leadership, and hopefully things should be changing soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for giving me.
And announce your name for me so kindly.
Mogas Wandimtaka.
Mogas, thank you.
You're welcome. As you know, the current system is not working for the hard-working drivers. You heard from most of us complaining about mismanagement, misconduct, and abuse. We need transparency and competitive management companies so that we can move for the best management. We have to be part of this process so that we don't have to come and tell you every bite of our problems. So we need to be part of this process. And we have a lot of problems, and you heard it. And I want you to hear us. Like, we need transparency and competitive management so that we can move for the best management. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Santayo Selassie. I really appreciate Ms. Wendy Gruhl and Mr. Rosenthal and for good words. I mean, for Ms. Rita Robinson also, and it looks promising. I hope we will be practical, and what we will need is nothing special, fairness, and a good service for the public. And, the companies now, they work together. Companies work together, and now they organized and sued us because we were organizing. And instead of competing for drivers, there is no competition among companies. They are like monopoly, they operate. Now it's six companies come together and sue LATWA for organizing and being a voice for the hard-working taxi drivers. And what we need is, as you guys, everybody said, we want input, we want participation, accountability, and transparency. And if possible, this thing goes to the Taxi Commission, and we'll speak about it and put some input, and then if they recommend it back to you, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you.
And I think the whole idea, why we wanted to start early too, was that there would be participation, that this would be an open and transparent process. It only happens once every 10 years. It needs to be. So,
Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
want to quickly add to Santaya's comment that they sued LATWA, they sued South Asian Network, and they sued me as a part of like their employers. They sued back in May and then pulled the lawsuit without prejudice. And we will bring a copy of the lawsuit, and you'll see the reason that they're suing, that we're organizing, so hence, they're suing us. Thank you very much. One of the
Thank you. Thank you. So DOT is going to return on November 6th with the draft taxi cab
Great.
RFP. So thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, is this item continued, or are you?
This item will be held in committee
Okay,
until November
continued
6th.
until then.
Continue to then. So item 4,
Okay. Because it's out in the field. It was here.
Already did.
I'll just continue. Okay.
did you already did it? Okay.
Oh, you
go
already
ahead.
did it. Thank you. Item 4 was a motion that asked the department to look at the citations that were issued to taxi cab in residential areas, which is actually part of our code. So what we have before you is the analysis that was done on a 3-year period, approximately from January of 2005 to January of 2008. Roughly about 5,300 total tickets were issued for all violations to taxi cabs, which is roughly 1 ticket per year per cab. Out of that 5,000, only about 700, or roughly 13%, were issued for parking a commercial vehicle or a taxi cab in a residential area. And we've provided the attachment for you to kind of see the graphical representations. Commercial vehicles could be, the definition of commercial vehicles is in section 80.69.2 pertaining to parking commercial vehicles. In that same time frame, the department also looked at other commercial vehicle citations, and roughly it was about 65,000 citations issued in that same time frame. So 700 represents roughly a 1% of that 65,000, and the 65,000 represents less than 1% of the entire citations we issue here in the City of Los Angeles, which is roughly 3 million a year. So this is something that I know our parking enforcement officers are now out there trying to target anybody. A lot of these calls come through complaints, and it's complaint-based, and our officers have to address these complaints when it's logged in, and they don't, as I mentioned, we have 65,000 other citations issued to other commercial vehicles, so there isn't the perception out there that our officers are out there for just the purpose of, trying to get the taxi cabs. Also, there's a breakdown that out of that 700 in a 3-year period, that a small percentage, 20% or so, only have 1 violation. 68% have only 1 ticket issued, and the rest have multiple citations issued to them. This was discussed with the council offices as well as the city attorney, and really the department, this is not a policy of the department, we just presented this information for you, and our suggestion from the city attorney was, we need to use caution in considering this type of change for this type of vehicles, because there's other types of commercial vehicles that then would be next in line, and why would be only justifying this change for this one particular item. And I don't know if Shelley has anything else she'd like to add.
Can I ask a question on that, Shelley? So if I have a pickup truck that on the side of it says, Gruel house cleaning or whatever it may be, and I park my vehicle in front of my house, is that considered a commercial vehicle?
Yes, if it has a commercial plate.
Has a commercial plate, but not if it just has a sign on the side.
When Amir may know better.
Yeah.
I believe that if a complaint comes in and the patrol officer goes over there to see, they will look to first define the vehicle as commercial because it has a commercial plate. Most vehicles.
So on a taxi cab, does it have a commercial plate on the back of the? I have to admit, I haven't looked at the back of the taxi cab plate.
They are commercial. When vehicles are used directly in a commercial enterprise, generally the DMV will expect and require that they get a commercial plate.
How about a limousine?
Limousines do have a special plate. It's called a livery plate. So, yes, it's commercial as well.
Because I see them parked all the time in the street and sidewalks.
Now, again, this is the sort of thing where typically, because of the vast amount of parking violations that may take place every day, it tends to be the kind of neighborhood violation that is typically enforced when there is a complaint. So typically, a patrol officer, and again, Amir could probably speak more to this, but at least my understanding is that that in residential neighborhoods, the enforcement officer is going to look for street cleaning violations or red curb violations, this sort of thing, and it would be the rare instance where a patrol officer would write a citation for commercial, over 3-hour commercial staying in a neighborhood absent a specific complaint from that neighborhood.
What if the cab driver lived in that house that he parked his cab in front of?
Most of them do, yeah.
That would be the same as the Gruel laundry truck if it had a commercial plate. In many instances, people that park their commercial vehicles in their homes do so in their garages or in their driveways. That's perfectly legal.
And what if they don't have a driveway and they live in this apartment or they live in this house and that's their only vehicle is their cab?
That's true for all people who have commercial vehicles who don't have another car. It's true for pet groomers or anybody
They're not
else.
like oversized. I mean, I think, they're
Yeah.
not huge oversized. The concern I have sometimes is, the huge oversized trucks that may park in your neighborhood that don't fit in, but these are cars.
Right,
I know they're commercial, but they're cars, so they're not.
There's a lot of commercial cars.
Yeah, on page 3 of your report, Councilmember, there is the definition per section 80.69.
Yeah.
So a commercial vehicle on section B does say 22 feet or less in length with the name of a business enterprise or establishment or a sign advertising a product or service painted, attached, or otherwise affixed onto the exterior thereof.
So even if they don't have a commercial
Correct.
plate.
That, according to the definition, that is
Wow.
correct.
But isn't that kind of absurd?
We didn't make the rules, Councilmember, yep.
I mean, just thinking of it in simple logic.
Yeah.
When did we make that law?
Before my time, so it's a long time ago.
Oh, Mr. Fisher, you're nodding your head.
Were you around then, Mr. Fisher? Oh, okay, well. Will you want to join us?
Yeah, we'd like to understand, because it's just, to me, kind of absurd, if Joe Schmo lives in that house and that's his cab, that he should be allowed to park in front of his house with his cab.
I don't know for sure, but I think one of the issues might be just the perceived blight of advertising vehicles on the street.
Well, could we take a look at that law just and have somebody give us an analysis?
And the question would be, what's the difference between it being in your driveway and in front of your house?
Use
You
of the
can
public
still
street.
I know, but you can still, if it's visual blight, you can still see the taxi in your driveway that has the advertising, whatever cab it may be.
The state vehicle code does give municipalities the right to regulate commercial vehicles. And clearly, earlier in the city's history, the fathers and mothers of the city determined, probably input from communities, that they chose to regulate in this area.
So,
I would say it's fairly typical, incidentally. I think it's fairly typical of municipalities to prohibit commercial vehicles from parking in residential streets. In some localities, residential neighborhood is defined per that city's zoning ordinance. Whatever zoned residential is where commercial vehicles cannot park. Our ordinance is actually a little bit more relaxed than that, but it does.
but for example, I have, my pet peeve of all pet peeves is the advertising trailers, hitched, although we did tow one of the unhitched last night. Hitched trailers, though, that are adjacent right now, this residential, I'm reading this because they're saying it's literally on Laurel Canyon, for example. It is parked it right near all the residential there. It's also on the other side is commercial, but it's near residential. Same in the other location. If it is parked near residential, you can't have that, even if it's within how many feet?
Let's see.
Majority of the buildings situated on the property contiguous thereto is used for residential purpose, whether as single-family dwellings or as multifamily dwellings. How do you define contiguous thereto or majority of, you know? I think what we're trying to ask you all to help us here, because I think we do feel that there are, again, a number of people. It is very different than a huge motorhome that you park out in front of your house. It's very different than a semi-truck you park out in front of your house, even a furniture truck that you park in front of your house. I mean, the size of it is a regular-sized car, because I could also, let's say I have, what are those, that drink that gives you all that energy, whatever, that purple and Red Bull, thank you. You know, you have those cars who are all painted Red Bull and have a Red Bull can on top of them. They park in front of their houses?
If they have a commercial plate, then that would be prescribed under the law. And incidentally, one of the reasons we have such frustration with the trailers is that the DMV stopped giving those trailers commercial plates a few years ago. If they had commercial plates, we'd have another tool.
That's the first time I've heard that. So I'm on that. But so what can we do?
Well, if I may, could I just to put this thing into perspective in terms of the numbers? You know, our analysis showed that 80% of all taxi cab owners didn't get any tickets for this violation in a 3-year period, and that 53 vehicle owners received 3 or more of these tickets over the 3-year period. And that's about 2 1/3% of all the vehicle owners. So I just want to put it in perspective. It's a very big problem for a very relatively small number.
But if I'm one of 53, you know.
Did you want to speak on this?
We do have public comment cards? Maybe before we finish, do you want to say something before we have public comment? And then?
As I mentioned in the opening remarks, you know, the council just needs to be cautious. We understand the issues and people living and wanting to park their vehicles. It's what other commercial vehicles. So if you did taxis, what other commercial vehicles or what other definitions are you as a council, as a legislative body, willing to put in there? Because it will come to that. You almost have to then start identifying plumbers, contractors, Red Bull, you name it. They're all going to be the same, and our officers cannot selectively enforce. And they're again, I just want to make sure they're doing their job. Officers are going out there and doing their jobs. This isn't something that they're in any way targeting any individual groups.
And I'm sure there are people who call in that a large percentage. I mean, we're not faulting the department. We're just trying to say, is there something that might be able to? Because if you're one of those 53 or you're one of those 100, it is a problem if you have nowhere else to park your vehicle. Where do you park it?
I think the concern I would have, and the reason that I suggested that we use caution, just not to say that the council can't change the policy or direct us to change the statute in some way. I gather from your remarks, Councilmember Gruhl, that you would be interested in exploring whether or not to remove the 22 feet or less if it has if it has a commercial plate and commercial riding. But again, that would apply to many more vehicles than just taxis. And I really don't see under the law that we have the authority to distinguish between some commercial sedans and not other commercial sedans.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
No, that's why I'm saying I'm trying to compare. There are taxis and there's trucks that happen to have a sign on the back. They don't have a commercial vehicle, but they are a commercial vehicle.
But we have a way to regulate those through our oversized vehicle program. So
if it's a pickup truck, if it's literally a Ford whatever, big truck that's not a commercial vehicle. It is just a big truck that I use to put all my, supplies in. A gardener. Do we?
Yeah, without
we'll
the
get
signage.
To Mr. Sachs, please. Mr. Sachs.
Without the necessary signage affixed to it, Councilmember, we wouldn't be able to ticket that individual.
Be like a Hummer on the street.
We could cite them for 72 hours, we could
Right.
cite them for street cleaning,
But I'm
but
just saying, we're differentiating between, I understand, a
Yeah.
commercial license plate, but if I have my car and I use it to be a gardener, or I have some other advertising on it because my vehicle is what I take, I'm a pool guy, you know, are those the same as a taxi cab? If you have a non-commercial truck that is parked out in front of your home, that is a pool or gardener or some other service that has a sign on the side, will that be cited in the current rules?
with the current rules, that would be cited, yes. That would be cited.
Especially if there was a complaint about it.
But yeah, that's the issue, Councilmember. Less than 1% of the total entire citation issued is what this category is. So it's not something that we are actively after.
No, and again, I don't want to say
just
we're
wanted
going.
you to have the whole picture as we together find
Nothing
the
is
solution.
easy.
Together we can find the solution.
Good. Okay, we're going to ask the public speakers to come out real quick. Arnold Sachs, Hamid Khan, Netanyahu, Melise Adumu, and then we'll go to Netabai.
Madam Chair,
Khan asked me to resurrect this and put it in front of us again. So.
Madam Chair, the disposition on this item, are you?
No, we haven't done anything yet. We're just hearing public comment. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Excuse me. Very quickly. Reading the background information, it mentioned permitted taxi cabs in L.A. And so I was wondering if it was a taxi cab from another city that somebody worked outside, another city, and parked their cab in front of their house. Would that still constitute a violation?
Yes.
Number two, you mentioned, and I would suggest respectfully you talk to Councilman Zine about this, because at a Rules and Committee meeting, he brought up the point that one of his great joys when he was a motorcycle rider was ticketing people in pickups who had
Go ahead.
who had regular plates on their cars, on pickups. They didn't have commercial plates, but they were hauling around equipment, and he would cite them and ticket them for illegal use of their vehicle. So, in a sense, if they don't have commercial plates and they're using it for a business, it's illegal based on the fact that they're misrepresenting what the vehicle is used for. It's not a passenger vehicle anymore. It's a commercial vehicle. So he found great joy in that. And then there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and I just
Having a senior moment.
yeah, I'm having a senior moment exactly. So
Pre-senior.
no. Commercial. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hamid Khan with the Los Angeles Taxi Workers Alliance. It seems just listening to the previous conversation that things are kind of getting lost in translation somewhere. There's a defense for an ordinance which has been in place for many years, but it really doesn't seem very rational. That's one thing. I mean, secondly, I think what that reflects is a structural and a logistical hardship for the little guy who's trying to make a little bit of money. That's what it goes down to. Where does a taxi worker park his or her cab overnight? There are no garage systems in the city of Los Angeles. It's not like New York. It's not like Chicago. They're allowed to park for 3 hours. Do we expect them to wake up every 3 hours in the middle of the night, move their car, come back and park it again? It is an issue of financial hardship. DOT talks about that 20% got the tickets. Well, they didn't factor in that they're assuming that everybody lives in the city of Los Angeles. Out of the 2,303 licensed cabs, a lot of people are not living in the city of Los Angeles, so the number is higher than 20%. Then they talk about 68% got one citation. Well, 1/3 got more than one citation than if you flip it around. So it by itself is a huge issue when you're talking about. Then they talk about the residents, that the residents are going to be complaining about it. Well, the taxi drivers are residents too. They live there. They make a little bit of money. They cannot live in gated communities. They can't live in homes with garages. There are 4 or 5 guys living in 2-bedroom apartments trying to make a living. Where do they park their cabs? It is a fundamentally an issue. It's a moral issue. It's a rational issue. There's a logical solution to that. Maybe another option could be to have a preferred residential parking permit. City of Inglewood is doing that. If you live in the city and if you're a resident of that area, get a city permit, because where else are you going to park the cab? We're not saying that everybody should be allowed to park their cabs in the city, but at least extend this courtesy to people who live there. Otherwise, it becomes a huge issue of financial hardships. We did our own math. $39,000 of tickets were paid by, money was paid by these drivers for the tickets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mead.
Hi, my name is Untitled Chapter. This parking issue, the community or the residents call and complain, and then the ticket is not true. I have two friends of mine, they live Arlington and Adams. When they park on Adams, it's too far away from their house. They just turn right, go about quarter of a mile. When they park over there, one has 3 unpaid tickets. Now it was $55, now already $60, each ticket. And they cannot afford to pay, as Hamid said, in 2-bedroom apartment and with 2 garages or 3 garages. If they are lucky, they might have 1 garage, and then the rest they don't have anywhere to park. Like he said, in Inglewood, you just go ahead and take your gas bill or telephone bill, your name and your address. They give you a sticker, and no police will give you a ticket after that. You have the right to park. The problem is, I don't know how DOT and city autonomies look at it. I mean, so many crimes we complained, they gave us a deaf ear, and they wake up when it comes to the drivers. And this problem has been going on for years. I've been struggling with the taxi industry over 10 years. Believe me, I have never seen some positive, constructive things from city autonomy. For some reason, our problem is maybe we work hard and we don't make that much money. Our biggest companies, they're not here today because they don't care about the cab drivers. They have big lawyers, big lobbyists. They're not here because it doesn't concern them. For the little poor guys, if it was for something else, there would be a lot of lobbyists you see in this room. And our problem is working hard, and most of us are immigrants. 90% of us are immigrants, and you cannot afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Malise, and then Nirabai.
Good afternoon. My name is Mallas Haddamu, United Independent Taxi President. The parking is really serious problem because you have to understand what taxis are doing. Most of the time they are servicing the community, and they are in the same community, living there, getting a ticket on the same address that where he lives is really painful. Because of this, some of the drivers, they park their cars on the business district area, they walk, it's giving them really hard time, and sometimes their radios are stolen, computers are stolen because they left their cars far away from where they live. And the other issue we're not discussing about getting a ticket on street cleaning time. No, we're talking about night time when they park their car or when they go for lunch. We respect the rule. We want it to be like other citizens who are living in the same neighborhood. When there is a street cleaning, we don't want to park the cars. But when there is a time to park, when they want to go to their home and sleep, it should be allowed. That's what we are asking. And the other thing, advertising, it was mentioned. Advertising, every time they go around there, advertising their logo. They pay for it, for City of Los Angeles. That shouldn't be like a crime, and it shouldn't be a matter of getting a ticket because they have a green or white or blue sign and they have their names on the door decal. It shouldn't be. So I think this committee can decide today or in the future, it should be allowed for the citizens. Yes, we can give special permits to park, but people who are living in City of Los Angeles, working for the City of Los Angeles, should be allowed to park. Thank you.
Thank you. Nirabai.
Good afternoon, Natabai Ahmed from Independent Taxi. The issue is just following a logic on this one. We never use residential areas for staging cabs. If that happens, if in one neighborhood we have 10, 15 cabs staged to service the area, I can understand the neighborhood cannot get a parking spot. But what we're talking here is a person who lives in that neighborhood and he's asking for one spot, and most of the tickets are overnight. I understand there is not a concerted effort to ticket these drivers, but like Amir says, it's a small percentage, but as the say goes, one person's recession is another person's depression. Most of people don't get ticket. Majority are getting $500-600 ticket. So this is unfair. And from my understanding, before my time in the management, about 15 years ago, there was one of the esteemed councilmen made a memorandum to the department, and we haven't been ticketed for a while. Now, recently, the last 5-6 years, now the tickets are coming again. I understand the department's position. They had complaints from the neighbor. If I have a beef with my neighbor, and the only way he can get me is to complain to the department that I don't have the same privilege as he have, that's unfair. And the size of the cab, like Councilman Gurul mentioned it, it's a small size. Now with the green going on, it's going to be much smaller than it is. So I don't understand why the department cannot make an exception on this one. I understand the implication of other commercial vehicles. It goes to the first item that we have on franchising. You know, all the cabs are not registered under a company name. They are registered under individual name. In order to get to access to the franchise, you have to belong to a company. So a group of people make themselves as a company, but in actuality, each cab belongs to that person. If he's parking it outside his area, you might ticket him, but compare the ticket to his residence and somehow find a way to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Amir, you wanted to correct?
I'd like to...
It's all her fault, right? Is that it?
No, it's actually, she's a blessing. The great Captain Mata corrected me, and I like to go on record and correct what I said, Councilmember, to you. In your example, it has to have a commercial plate and 22 feet or less with a business name or enterprise. So I apologize. I had that wrong, and Captain Mata corrected me. I think we again, were asked to just provide statistical information. You asked, Councilmember, what can we do? Captain Mata also mentioned another good idea. City of San Marino and a few other cities, I think, as mentioned with Mr. Khan, that they do provide a commercial vehicle permitting. Much smaller cities, obviously, maybe it can be handled, but all of the permitted commercial type vehicles through permits and having a business name and having paid all their dues, then get this type of a permit. I'm not sure what that would take for LA to do that. Again, very large number of different types of commercials.
Can we look at what the other cities are doing, like
Yeah.
Inglewood? I think, was that Inglewood that someone mentioned? Inglewood? Okay.
So our
And San
suggestion,
Marino?
our suggestion would be if you'd like us to come back in 45 days
great.
with some additional information
Okay.
for you on maybe some costs, some pros and cons of doing permitting,
Great.
what other cities are doing, and if LA were to follow that model, would it be building and safety, business licensing, who would handle that? And we can
Right.
provide that hopefully in 45 days to you.
Okay, that would be
I
great.
second that concept, and I agreed with what they said. To me, it's a no-brainer. If you live in that house and you live in the city and you work here, that you should have an ability to park your cab. And if other cities have figured out a strategy that works, we heard Englewood and we then just heard others, report back with that, and maybe we can find a way to make it work for our taxi cab drivers.
Thank you.
We'll do that.
Thank you to all the, both owners and taxi cab drivers that are here. Thank you. Item 2, and Ms. Butcher, we might have you come on up, Ms. Butcher.
Item number 2 is a DOT report in response to a Parks Alarcon motion relative to parking collection activity.
I've done too much talking, so I'm going to hand it over here to...
And I might let Julie, would you like to speak first, Julie, or do you want to wait until they're done?
As you wish.
We'll let Julie pick, won't we? Julie, what would you like to do?
We're going to be very quick.
I think we should not give tickets to taxi cabs that park in front of their homes.
They all left, they didn't get to hear you, but go ahead.
Oh, but that's not what you really wanted to know. On behalf of SEIU Local 721, what we'd ask is that you actually hold and not receive and file this pending a complete analysis that actually involves talking to the unions of the city. This motion was introduced in response to our request, and we never saw it until today. And so we'd like the opportunity to actually analyze the department's analysis. I can't imagine that if we were to contract this work in, that we would need 3 times as many people in a new building to do it. There's nothing that a contractor can do that city workers can't, given half a chance. And we'd like that half a chance to actually do a real study of the options and possibilities rather than what was done here. with all due respect.
So we may save both of you from speaking at this moment, only because have you had a chance to meet with the union at all to talk a little bit about this?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Why don't can we continue this for 2
Yeah, I
weeks?
just have a couple of quick questions, and maybe you could answer when you come back with it.
Sure.
The first one is the report states that the city could resume this operation, but there would be significant startup costs along with an ongoing annual cost of performing this work. Those costs seem very high. How were those costs determined? If you could, when you give us
The cost, the facility costs, for example, were an estimate provided by General Services Leasing with regards to a 5,000 square foot facility. The thought was that there was concern about mingling the two activities together, the coin counting and the coin collecting. So in an effort to try to mitigate those concerns, the department identified an opportunity to have a separate facility to be able to mitigate that concern. The cost associated with staffing, it's the same number of staffing that's being provided by the contractor now. So we try to bring forward the parking meter collector salary that was established previously to current day salary. That's why it's listed the way it is. It's not currently in the personnel department's classifications, so we would request that the personnel department reestablish the classification and by virtue of that reestablish the salary range. So based upon that, you would then maybe have a better handle as to what it actually cost.
Okay, if you could, go ahead, were you going to say something?
No, just...
Second part was, we'd like, that more clarity, because I know Julie's looking at that. How would the city fund these positions?
Conceivably, the city could fund these positions out of the Special Parking Revenue Fund, since it's an activity currently provided for as a contract line item within the Special Parking Revenue Fund. If you did that, then the Special Parking Revenue Fund would have that much less to do other activities, such as the purchase of meters and/or parking lots.
And the third question is, with the new parking meters being installed throughout the city, where you can pay by phone, credit card, etc., would we really need 18 DOT staff actually performing collections in person throughout the 72 parking meter zones?
Well, that would depend on some experience with the parking meter payment by the consumer. If the consumers opted to use credit card, obviously there would be a decrease in the number of coins and/or bills needed to be collected. Thereby, you would have less costs. You would have less frequency of collections and therefore less cost. That's an assumption that I am not comfortable making at this point, not until we have more data with the actual pay stations out in the field.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And just to close, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure, and I do want to apologize to Julie and the unions. We did provide this more as a analysis, and what I would like is part of our return back is to really get the task force working, the CAO, CLA really working with us, with the unions, and really sitting down through this. We just did provide a lot of statistical information and what we could do, but really the whole concept needs to really be through the CAO's office as far as if this does make sense or does not make sense. This was not in any way, this was really an information for us to put it on the table for you as decision makers to make the decisions.
So let's do 30 days. I think 2 weeks will be too soon, so let's do 30 days.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big thanks for sticking around. We do have two public comment cards, Kathy Daldana and Arnold Sachs. Thanks for your patience, Kathy. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Deladani, new president of the Ventura Koangas Specific Plan Review Board.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I was down here at City Hall today, and I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to give you an update about what's happening with the Plan Review Board. First of all, we're rebuilding, and thanks to Councilmember Gruhl, Councilmember Labange, and Councilmember Zine, we have several new appointees who it's wonderful. So we're going to be moving in a real positive direction. We have Priya Mettendal is our planner from city planning that works closely with us, and she's we're very fond of her. She's hardworking. She is undertaking the preparation of the annual report, which hasn't been done for years. And so we're very pleased with that. We didn't even have to ask her. And she, last night at our meeting, she was able to get a Sergio from DOT to come and give us an update of what's happening with the short-term improvements that your committee approved several months ago. And plus, we're also appreciative to him that he will be working closely with us. He offered to work closely with us to keep us abreast of all the transportation issues. We are also in the forming a couple of committees right now. One of those will be a signage committee that one of their first priorities will be to do an easy-to-read brochure to give to businesses on the boulevard about what's required for signage and helping them to comply with the signage ordinance. And we'll be giving those in a simple form, and we'll be distributing to all the different communities to use. It's, especially in this budget crunch, when you don't have the inspectors, it's a more positive way to go, and most of them do comply if you go in and ask them to get it. But I just wanted to give you, and I'll be back on periodically to let you know what's happening. Thanks so much.
In the loop, appreciate it. And Sergio's great. He really is a good addition. You can tell him I said that publicly. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Arnold Sachs. 3 quick things. In last week's, last week's meeting, last Wednesday, Trade and Commerce, I brought up a fact that there was an item on your agenda from 10-1 for transfer of funds for the continued deployment of traffic officers at the Port of Los Angeles. And since the Trade and Commerce Committee had some people from LAWA, I asked about having traffic officers deployed around the holidays outside the airport, because every holiday it's always the same. Don't come there 1 day in advance, come 3 days early so that you don't have to worry about the traffic. There's never any officers in the vicinity of El Segundo Boulevard and Sepulveda Boulevard, or Imperial Highway and Sepulveda Boulevard. I don't know about the north part of the airport, but there needs to be something done there. And since they're allocating $28,000 for the port for 2 months, I think they could find funding for 1 day or 2 days out of the year to have officers there. Item number 2, this is a news article for you, Councilman Rosendahl. Date is 4/6/08 from the Daily Breeze. $24,000 to ATS for off-site parking at the airport for the contract we talked about, the food service vendors. Just so you want to check it out. And then item number 3, last week I was here, or last meeting, I asked about graffiti. When I talked about being on a bus and finding an ATS uniform having a city seal on it. And so is this an official notepad from the city of LA? It has the city of Los Angeles Department of Transportation seal on it. Would this be considered official city literature?
That far, but you can ask people behind
I can ask, as a matter of fact, I can give you a copy and I can give them a copy.
Okay.
But I'd like to point out that, very quickly, just finish this up, that 2 articles. One was both were in the LA Times. One was regarding a lawyer. I don't recall him ever telling me he was a lawyer, but he had a company named Federal Defense Associates. The presumption was there that he was a lawyer.
Just ask you to conclude. I have to go down to another committee.
Very quickly. And this is from this Highway Patrol, that they were giving out frames, creating a perception that the $11.99 membership result gave beneficial treatment from officers. My point being that if that's official, the uniforms that the ATS has on their starters they have a seal from the city. The perception is that they're city employees, and when they're nowhere near city employee, no association with the city, and they need to be removed.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
And I'll turn this in for